Welcome to Headstones and Microphones, where we use AI to step into the past through a researched, first-person simulation of history's most interesting people. I am your host, Calvin. While we've added some creative storytelling, our goal is to inspire your own study of these fascinating lives. Now, let's meet our guest. Today, I am joined by a true pioneer in the field of psychology, Dr. Karen Horney. Karen, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you feeling?
Hi, Calvin.
For those who may somehow not know who you are you?
I was a psychoanalyst who dared to look at human development a bit differently than my predecessors. I focused heavily on how our culture and our relationships, not just our base instincts, shape who we become. I spent my life exploring the neurotic personality, as I like to call it, and trying to understand how we can grow toward our true selves.
A fascinating legacy. When and where were you born?
I was born on September 16, 1885, in a lovely town called Blankenese, which is just outside of Hamburg, Germany.
What was your given name at birth?
My full name at birth was Karen Clementine Danielson.
Is there a story behind your birth name?
It was simply the name my parents chose for me, though I suppose Karen was a solid traditional choice. I was the eldest child of my father's second marriage, following my brother, Bernd.
What was your hometown like growing up?
Blankenese was quite beautiful, near the water. Being a sea captain's daughter, the ocean was always present in my mind. It felt like a world of its own, though my own world was often confined to the intensity of our household.
What was your family life like?
It was complex. My father was a very strict, authoritarian sea captain, quite religious in a way that felt like a constant lecture. My mother was much more liberal, a bright intellectual who encouraged my curiosity. There was often tension between them, and as a child, you feel those divisions. I often felt like I had to navigate between these two very different worlds.
What kind of kid were you?
I was incredibly curious and intellectually hungry. I wasn't always sure where I fit in, and I struggled with feeling unloved at times, which I think drove me to be even more determined to prove my intelligence. If I couldn't be the pretty one in the eyes of my father, I would certainly be the smartest one.
What were your biggest fears growing up?
I feared being insignificant or unloved. That feeling of not being enough or being overshadowed was a very real, heavy weight for a young girl.
What did you dream of becoming as a child?
Once I realized that I loved learning and that I had a sharp mind, I set my sights on becoming a doctor. It was considered a very lofty, perhaps even unrealistic goal for a young woman in my time, but that didn't stop me.
What were some of your favorite activities in school?
I adored anything that challenged me. I loved the sciences and biology, anything that helped me understand how things and people worked.
What was your first job?
Before I established my own practice, I worked as a physician and then immersed myself in the rigorous training of the Berlin Psychoanalytic Institute. That was my true professional beginning, serving as an analyst and eventually a teacher.
Was there a moment where you realized you were different from everyone else?
Oh, certainly. When I decided to enter medical school, I was one of the very few women in the entire university. That feeling of being a pioneer, as you might say, was very distinct. I was in a room full of men, pursuing a path that the culture told me wasn't meant for me.
What's a decision that changed everything for you, but felt small at the time?
Taking the leap to go to university, despite my father's skepticism. It seemed like just a step, but it opened the door to the life of the mind I so desperately craved.
What was your biggest break?
Being accepted into medical school and later finding my place within the psychoanalytic community in Berlin. Those milestones allowed me to turn my personal struggles into a career that could help others.
What were your biggest struggles before success?
Navigating the prejudices of my time was exhausting. I was a woman in a field dominated by men who thought they had all the answers. I also struggled with my own bouts of depression and the need to constantly prove my worth.
Did you ever consider quitting?
Never. Even when things were difficult or when I felt marginalized, the drive to understand the human psyche was too strong. I couldn't just turn it off.
Were there any specific daily habits or routines that you feel are essential to your success?
Writing and reflecting. I was always thinking, observing, and putting those thoughts onto paper. Discipline in my intellectual work was my anchor.
What job would you have had if fame never happened?
I imagine I would still have been a teacher or a writer of some kind. My need to understand and communicate is a part of who I am, regardless of any recognition.
What was your life like before fame?
It was a life of quiet study, raising my 3 daughters, and working hard to build my credibility in a very challenging field.
How did relationships change after success?
Success brings a different kind of visibility. Some people were drawn to my ideas, while others felt threatened by them. It made me realize how important it is to be clear about your own values.
Did fame bring happiness?
Fame is a distraction. Happiness comes from the work itself and from the relationships we cultivate. I was most happy when I was making a breakthrough in my theory or helping a patient find their own way forward.
What was the downside of becoming famous?
The professional isolation. When you challenge the established order, as I did with some traditional Freudian views, you pay a price. I was eventually excluded from certain circles, but I found my own path forward by forming new associations.
What misconceptions did people have about you?
People often focused on the conflicts I had with other analysts, painting me as merely a rebel. I saw myself as a seeker, not just a contrarian. I wanted to build better, more inclusive theories, not just tear others down.
What was your darkest moment?
The years of deep personal conflict in my marriage and the internal struggle to balance motherhood with my ambition. Those were very lonely times, but they were also the crucible for my later theories on basic anxiety.
What past regrets did you carry that you spoke about?
I don't believe in dwelling on regrets. Every experience, even the painful ones, taught me something about the human condition that I could then use to help others.
What's something people misunderstood about your life?
That I was cold or overly analytical. I actually cared very deeply about the people I worked with. I just believed that the best way to help was to be honest, rigorous, and supportive of their growth.
Tell me about a time when everything went wrong and how did you handle it?
Leaving the institute that had been my professional home was incredibly difficult. But instead of giving up, I gathered my colleagues and students, and we founded our own institute. It was a perfect example of moving through a problem rather than being defeated by it.
Did fame and fortune change your life?
Not in the ways people might think. I traveled to many lands, which was wonderful, but the core of my life remained my work and my search for understanding.
What personal battles were you fighting privately?
The battle for self-realization. We all have that internal struggle to overcome our fears and become the person we are meant to be. I was living that journey right alongside my patients.
Who had the biggest influence on your life?
My mother, for her encouragement of my mind, and perhaps even the challenges presented by my father, who showed me exactly what kind of atmosphere I didn't want to create for others.
What was life like in your final years?
They were very active and productive. I continued to teach, write, and see patients in New York until the very end. I believe that there is no reason why we should not continue to change and grow until our last day.
What were you working on in your career before you passed away?
I was always refining my theories on neurosis and human growth. I wanted to make sure my work was as clear and helpful as possible for the next generation of students.
When and where and how did you pass away, and how old were you?
I passed away in New York on December 4th, 1952, at the age of 67.
What's a random fact about you most people have never heard?
I had a great love for travel. In my 67 years, I managed to visit so many wonderful places, from Mexico and South America to the islands of the Pacific and Japan. I loved experiencing different cultures.
What's the craziest rumor ever told about you?
Oh, there were many, mostly revolving around my disagreements with other analysts. It's always easier for people to invent a dramatic rivalry than to actually engage with the nuance of the ideas.
What was your most unique habit?
I was a constant observer. Even in social settings, I couldn't help but notice the patterns in how people interacted. It wasn't always a habit I could turn off.
What was your favorite food?
I always enjoyed a good meal, but I think the company you keep while eating is just as important as the food itself.
Did you have a favorite restaurant?
I spent so much time in New York later in life that I had a few favorite spots there, but I don't think I had one single place that stood above all others. I was too busy exploring the city.
What was your favorite book?
I read so many. Anything that provided deep insight into the human heart and society was always on my desk.
Did you have any known rivalries?
I had disagreements with many in the psychoanalytic establishment, including some of Freud's students, because I simply could not accept the male-biased view of female psychology. If that made us rivals, so be it. It was a necessary disagreement for the field to progress.
Tell us a story nobody talks about.
Well, people often forget that I was a mother of 3 daughters while doing all of this. Balancing the demands of a growing, complex professional life and motherhood was a story of its own, full of small, private triumphs and challenges that never made it into the textbooks.
What's your funniest behind-the-scenes moment?
I think, despite the serious nature of my work, I always appreciated a moment of wit. I remember times during intense lectures when a student would say something so unexpectedly perceptive, it would catch us all off guard and bring a bit of laughter to the room.
Did you ever prank someone?
I don't think I was much of a prankster. My life was too busy with serious pursuits to spend time playing tricks on people.
What was the most outlandish purchase you made?
Perhaps my travels. Investing in seeing the world, experiencing different cultures and people, was the best purchase I ever made.
What advice would you give people chasing success?
Don't look for success in external validation or power. Look for it in your own growth. Be honest about your fears, cultivate your relationships, and never stop trying to understand yourself. True success is becoming the most authentic version of yourself.
That is wonderful advice. Before we sign off, do you have any closing remarks for our listeners?
Just this. We are all in a constant state of becoming. Do not be afraid of your own questions, and do not be afraid to challenge the ideas you are given. Your own growth is the most important journey you will ever take. Thank you so much, Calvin, for this lovely conversation.
The pleasure was entirely mine, Karen. Thank you for sharing your incredible life and wisdom with us today. We've had a wonderful time learning about your journey, your theories, and your passion for understanding the human spirit. And that wraps up another conversation from Beyond the Grave. Thanks for joining us on the Headstones and Microphones podcast. Remember, legends may die, but their stories never do. Please help spread the word by sharing and following the pod.